Most of popular Bitcoin critics aren't even understanding how Bitcoin works, and their arguments are weak and very questionable. But fear not, I am here to help. In this video, I will show you the cases for the biggest threats to Bitcoin existence in 2020. The list of the threats is sorted by novelty of the problem. Up-to-date issues first, older ones last. So if you watch this video in 2025, it may be totally different list. And that's the beauty of Bitcoin. Even though its code is fairly static and the main consensus rules don't even budge, it's just still a 12 years old experiment. And people are trying to find the value behind it for a long time. Guess why the logo shape is in the form of the coin and the letter itself is so similar to typing of popular currencies like US dollar or British pound. I have the theory that early adopters were mainly promoting a money/currency-like behavior in Bitcoin. So easy, reliable, fast and cheap way of spending it for goods and services. Then came the Silk Road era and Bitcoin was highly utilized for pseudonymous transactions. A lot of people who joined Bitcoin in that time seemed to be highly privacy oriented and wanted to push Bitcoin this road. And the recent times, Bitcoin reached $50,000 in the times of high national currency inflation, keeping its value against the fiat much better than investing in gold or stocks or real estates, hence a big movement of treating Bitcoin just like the technology for savings. And we have a lot of additional flavors. Bitcoin as a mean of liberty, self-sovereignty, living borderless, programmable money. And I think that's the beauty of Bitcoin. It can be all of it. But not all people are so open-minded as I am. In Bitcoin history it happens often that the big player who invests in Bitcoin and Bitcoin related businesses tries to put pressure on the community, make blocks bigger against original consensus to facilitate it for more frequent payments, acknowledge only investing side of it without even mentioning other utilities, regulate it so it's more easily tradable against fiat or shitcoins. And this is the first and actual danger to Bitcoin: politics and influence. At the end of the day, Bitcoin is just the software that is vetted by thousands of Bitcoiners running the specific version of software on their nodes. If the consensus would be skewed towards one specific vision and it would gain enough power, it may morph Bitcoin into not Bitcoin, like it happened with popular Bitcoin forks, Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV, not Bitcoins. So I mentioned Bitcoin being software project. I guess you and me don't follow every commit merged into Bitcoin Core project, which is the most common Bitcoin full client available. So who is working on it? There is a team of open source developers, some anonymous, some very influential, some working under the grants and some just hobbyists. Full spectrum when it comes to geographical distribution, race and gender. Because Bitcoin doesn't care about it. There are no geography rules, gender rules or racial rules in the Bitcoin consensus. But there is always a way of steering the water, and social techniques are one of the best ways of achieving disarray in Bitcoin Core inner circle, as well as distrust from the community perspective. Have you heard about blacklist/blocklist change? In short, there was a troll GitHub account searching through dozens of open source repositories and changing the words to so-called inclusive. And I may generalize here, but a group of English-speaking core developers and maintainers decided it's a good change and added it temporarily to the code, from blacklist to blocklist. Because of the community outrage, the term was changed to more representative and neutral wording of excluded. From my perspective, it was a well-designed social attack pointed towards people who are into virtual signaling, living in the native-speaking bubble. Another more recent example is again Bitcoin Core project stopping publishing Bitcoin white paper in its codebase because of possible legal litigation by Bitcoin enemies. Maybe these are small things and shouldn't be treated as threats to Bitcoin, but I think social techniques should be a second threat on my list. Exchanges and big payment processors and wallet providers are big hubs of activity around Bitcoin. My thesis is that speculation is the biggest use case of Bitcoin by volume on-chain. Just look at the exchange revenues and compare them to fees Bitcoin miners earn from processing transactions. Exchanges are biggest onboarding tools for people to get their first and subsequent Bitcoin. But all of this traffic in Western countries is heavily KYC'd. That means exchanges has to know the details of their customers. Also, the regulation, as usual, are pointed against small investors and Bitcoin buyers. What's more, anti-money laundering regulations are trumping the innovation in this space. Centralized exchanges also bring a lot of bad PR towards Bitcoin every time they are getting hacked. How many times have you read in the media that Bitcoin was hacked? Right, I'm in this space only from 2017, but I have seen countless of headlines like that. Bad PR and anti-privacy solutions aren't that dangerous for the honeybadger. They are at most the wasp stings. What may be more dangerous is the creation of financial tools like leverage trading on top of Bitcoin. In the core, these tools aren't that dangerous, but as practice has shown, they are rarely executed without some mispractice. Recently in the stock market we had example of naked shorting, so short selling the shares that weren't in the existence. Most of exchanges aren't regulated in terms of being illicit towards customers, which best example is Canadian exchange market. 2 exchanges bankrupt in recent history, one had incident of washed trading, 21 million bitcoins. I would bet there are exchanges right now that operate on fractional Bitcoin reserves, allowing trading of non-existent assets. At the end of the day, existence of centralized hubs in Bitcoin deems the property of Bitcoin less fungible. And this is how we arrived to point number 4. A big threat to Bitcoin is lack of education. Proper key management, not storing coins on the exchanges. These are the topics every Bitcoiner should promote and execute themselves. Unfortunately, this area of Bitcoin knowledge is still underdeveloped and full of conflicting ideas. It doesn't help that a lot of big Bitcoin and cryptocurrency influencers are interested more in economical aspects of owning Bitcoin rather than technology behind it. Numbers go up technology? Yeah, show me the line in the code that says that. And so we have these nuggets of knowledge popping every once in a while. To use so-called hardware device with fixed private key assigned to them by the issuer, or to use old laptop, strip it from all the software and generate keys there from some custom script. Or even better, if you just bought your first $100 of Bitcoin, you have to store it in 3 of 7 multisig using multiple vendors of hardware wallets and external services like Casa. Overall, bad ideas for the general public. Funny thing is that Bitcoin is pretty simple if you start understanding basic concepts, and storing Bitcoin isn't about following your favorite influencer, but choosing solution that works for your case. On the other hand, there are newbies who are just set up account on exchange or blockchain.com thinking they own their Bitcoin. As a contributor to Bitcoin Stack Exchange, I saw it countless times. The topic of the question usually is, I forgot my password to blockchain. So yeah, point number 4, lack of proper education. Bitcoin is for enemies, right? Every 6 months, Bitcoin Core has a new release and the code slightly changes, mostly on the peer-to-peer and wallet side. But Bitcoin Core is also the reference Bitcoin consensus implementation. What do I mean by that? There are these consensus rules of Bitcoin that everyone in the system has to abide by. Like how to make a proper transaction so it's verifiable, the rules of mining a block, how many bitcoins there will be, and many small things on how to connect to network, how to send a proper message to it. But they are all written in Bitcoin Core implementation, which is overwhelmingly popular with more than 99% nodes running Bitcoin Core. For example, Lightning Network, layer 2 on top of Bitcoin designed for fast payments, it has multiple implementations like LND, async, C-Lightning, and they are all following the rules written down in the bold specification. There is nothing like that for Bitcoin, with Bitcoin Core being the only implementation that matters and a single point of failure. So it updates every few months, and although the consensus shouldn't change, it may happen. There is also idea of soft forks, planned changes in consensus, backwards compatible that aim to make Bitcoin a better, faster software, but it also brings controversy. Bitcoin SegWit soft fork was a scaling solution, and at the time of activating, the community was divided between the software fix in terms of SegWit and the scaling based on changing consensus rules, loosening them to allow bigger blocks. And what about cryptography? Every cryptographic method has an expiration date. The algorithms to solve complex math are getting better, and overall entropy of every cryptographic construct is getting longer as brute force attacks are easier to perform due to Moore's law. Hardware is just getting better. What was the standard in the middle of 20th century, key length of around 50 bits, now is breakable by brute force in hours on a higher shelf laptop. And in Bitcoin, there is a rarely used anything below 256 bits of entropy. Summarizing, Bitcoin is a software project. Yeah, it has its own community, but at the end of the day, Bitcoin is just the code running on computers. And a big threat to Bitcoin are the code vulnerabilities, either by faulty design or through expiration of its cryptographic primitives. And the last thing, obviously there would be no list without mentioning mining pools. Idea is simple, you can buy a mining rig and start contributing hash power towards solving the next block, but the chances of making it with only one rig are close to zero. There are software providers which will fetch you the block schema, and now you as well as the others can start hashing against it. These software providers are called pools, making a group of miners with common interest. Good idea for a small guy, but mining pools have some shortcomings. One of them is ability to choose which transactions are being selected for a block. In case of mining against Bitcoin Core, one would choose the transactions with the highest fees attached to them, obviously. When the pool, in fact centralized entity, orders the transactions, they may prioritize some but also censor some transactions. This phenomenon is called out-of-bound pool mining and incentivize pool operators at the same time disincentivize miners. One of the examples might be with exchanges operating their own pools. They can mine transactions with lower or even zero fees, and pool members would have to mine them. There are also other factors. In case of possible Bitcoin soft forks, pools have the ability to politicize the issue by voting for or against some changes. Good example can be user-activated soft fork when pools have voted for SegWit 2x while community opted in for SegWit. The infamous New York Agreement is a great example when mining equipment producers, alongside with bigger players, decided that it's best for Bitcoin. Fortunately, they lost this battle as market decided about these ideas to be bogus, and community just by threatening with user-activated soft fork pushed for SegWit activation. These are all the threats to Bitcoin existence that are coming to my mind. Do you know any more categories? If you do, please share them in the comment section. As always, consider clicking the subscribe button if you want to watch more videos like this one. Have a great day and keep being curious about Bitcoin.